thought I would take my chances. You know, you only live once. You might as well try to plant a peach tree. Hello everyone, how are you today? I hope you're having a really good day so far. If you're new here, my name's Taylor. I live in Baltimore, Maryland, and on my YouTube channel, I generally feature content that's focused on knitting or spinning. And in this week's episode of what I like to call the Thread to Mend podcast series, I'm going to share with you the things that I'm making in real time, as well as my new stash-quisition, I think they say. I impulsively made a large purchase from Stephen and Penelope. If you're not aware, Stephen West, famous knitwear designer, has a yarn shop and a couple yarn bases, and I purchased 10 skeins of his bicycle base. And I have them in a basket here. I'm just gonna pick them up and show them to you. But before I get into that, I think I'm going to talk a little bit about a very special craft book to me. This is one that I picked up from the Book Thing in Baltimore, which is not open. We actually tried to check it out today, but they were closed. But it's a free book drop where you can go and take anything you want and bring it home for free. It costs you nothing. And I found one day a copy of Better Home and Garden's Stitchery and Crafts. And this is, I think, a perfect little example of my aesthetics. I love old things. I love vintage, almost anything. And this book in particular is a really good example of my favorite colors and favorite shapes and anyway, all kinds of things. So I thought I would share a little bit about it with you. I was in my Instagram messages talking to a viewer about what is art, what is craft, you know, that age-old question. And I just wanted to share some things that I think of as art, but are very much craft because, you know, it's just a person and their fiber. It's not too academic, it's not too, you know, high end, it's just making. And I love the incorporation of nature, like, you know, mushrooms and flowers and apples and fruit. I love squirrels. I'm a huge fan of all vintage squirrels. And this book in particular just has so many images that I adore. I love the loud and bright color schemes. I love just how it goes into all kinds of craft. It's not specific to knitting, but it does incorporate a lot of string and a lot of fiber. And it just goes on and on with all kinds of inspiration and images. So many images are just hand drawn and then worked with yarn in some way, but I love this wall hanging here. Anyway, I just thought I would share an old book that I've had in my stash that I find deeply inspirational. Even in the background here, do you see this rug that they've hung up? It's like just plants and gorgeous flowers. I really very much am inspired by that kind of thing, and I just really love old stuff. I love the idea of growing old. You know, I'm gonna be 37 this June, and I was always told how young I look, and I just have always wanted to grow old. And I just really love to find old things and treasure them and keep them alive to be even older. So that is one old thing. And a new to me thing is this copy of Barbara Walker's Knitting from the Top, which was a book Andrea Mowry recommended in her knitting podcast that she recorded last week. Right after watching that episode of her series, I purchased this book. And then in this week's video, she recommended Barbara Walker's second Treasury of Knitting, which I don't own. I do own the first Treasury, but I just felt this deep sort of fear of what's the scarcity? I think there's this scarcity mentality that came over me all of a sudden, and I thought, if I don't buy this book now, I might never have the chance to own it. And so I bought that book on thriftbooks.com, and along with a couple other vintage knitting books that I hope to enjoy. They were only priced at like $5 with free shipping, so I tacked a couple extra books onto my order, and I'm excited for those to arrive. I just got this in the mail yesterday, so I haven't cracked into it yet, but I'm really excited to read this book. It's very, I think, like theoretical, you know, it's like a lot to read. It's not charts or hand knitting instructions. It's very much like, I think, lots of words. So I'm excited to crack into that soon. And then when my other books arrive, I will share those with you as well. But let me get into the West Wool yarn haul. I have in this basket here, my supply of what you might already recognize is my Green Mountain Spinnery 2-ply DK weight organic Vermont yarn. I have this in the basket here because I intend to make this project very soon. I want another cardigan in my wardrobe that is next to skin soft and easy to wear with anything in my wardrobe so that I can pretty much make it a daily staple. I was scrolling through Ravelry and I stumbled across a project page for a Stephen West pattern, and I was just so in love with the way this maker incorporated their colors into their version of his, I think it's like the bobble cardigan. And I've seen other people make this cardigan online, and at the time that they were making it, I wasn't like drawn to it really so much. I think maybe because I'm not deeply inspired by superwash yarns. I don't love the way that it drapes. I don't love the way it smells when it's wet. That really turns me off, to be honest. I really love sheepy, woolly yarn. And I, again, feeling this scarcity mentality, I thought to myself, if I don't buy West Wool now, I might not have the chance to buy it later, which I don't even know why that thought came over me. But I just figured, you know, the dollar is converting pretty well to the euro right now. I'm gonna buy this yarn and just go for it. And I did, and I bought 10 skeins. You're gonna see only 8 of them in this basket, or 7, because I have 3 of them pulled aside for a different future project. And then, you know, this is the strange thing about buying more yarn, is sometimes it helps you find inspiration to knit yarn already in your stash, which was the case for me. Years ago, I think it was on our honeymoon, we drove through New York to Maine, and we stopped at Pearl Soho. And while I was there, I bought 4 50 ounce. I bought 4 50-gram skeins of Brooklyn Tweed's Loft yarn. I got these 2, which I think is like the fawn color or some, it's discontinued. And then 2 of this kind of limey green color. So I have 100 grams of each, and I've never had a project to work them into. I thought about knitting maybe like a t-shirt with them, because 200 grams you really can't get much out of. But I'm a small person, so I could make like a small t-shirt with 200 grams maybe. But I never found a project. I always thought, well, they could be like a color work, you know, edition. I really just loved the colors, and I thought, what can be done with 50 grams? Might as well get 100, but I still had no idea what I was ever going to do with them. And I really feel like they fit into this project really well. They are also fingering weight. If I haven't mentioned yet, I purchased the bicycle base from West Wool, which is a fingering weight base yarn. It is 10% Texel and 90% Falkland Merino. This is the Copenhagen color, which is a nice flat black. And this yarn is 390 yards per 100 inches. I bought 2 skeins of black to knit for the collar of the Stephen West Bobble cardigan. And then I purchased, I'll give you the color names, Cardamoma. I'm probably saying that wrong. This is Tiger. This is Glow. This is Green Olive. And we have Wellington. This is like a dark hunter green color. And I don't normally combine yellows with dark greens unless I'm doing more of a spectrum. And you know, I feel like if I didn't have this orange, it would be too green in my mind. So I really love the orange to really give it a pop and to make it a little bit more out there, a little more like of a vintage feel, like a real 70s color aesthetic. You know, not dissimilar to that book I just showed you. I really very much want this to be like a bold garment, but also not too much of one thing, which I feel like if I didn't have this pop of a reddish orange, it would be a little too much of one thing with this kind of two color gradient here. So I really love that orange addition to it. And I think that the brown muddiness to this green color really will sit nice between the dark green and the red, because ultimately this is going to be the repeat of colors. It's going to go from this brown to orange to gold to bright yellow, then this like bright green to olive, back to, what did I call this? Dark green. And then back around. I didn't want the orange and the dark green to be next to each other. I felt like the contrast was just too stark. So I thought that this introduction of a brown is really like a great medium. It's almost like a neutral that blends itself well with the rest of the design. And there's no other great place that it fits except for maybe, like, I don't even think it goes great between these two colors, because it just doesn't like blend anywhere, you know, except next to the red, I think, because it's so brown. It's a greenish brown in my opinion. So I'm just really excited that without an intention, I found a use for these gorgeous skeins of Brooklyn tweed I've been coveting in my stash. And I think I'm going to get a really good use out of them. And then, you know, I still might have enough extra yarn. I can incorporate all of these colors again in a more like remnant project with a different base, you know, maybe a gray, or I can always find more of a color like black, or I could, you know, use like hand spun that's like natural white, or anything at all. I could incorporate these colors again into a bigger project with smaller bits of them. So I'm really happy with this yarn haul. There were two other colors I purchased. They did not make the cut into that project. I thought I would put these in as well, but I felt like they made the project a little too modern looking. I want it to look vintage. I want it to look like it came right out of the 70s. So I pulled, I'm sorry, my stomach is growling. I've already recorded this podcast. I did it outside and it was gorgeous, but the audio was horrible. My neighbor has a bug light that constantly buzzes, and I didn't realize how loud it was in the recording. So I had to totally scrap today's podcast. I'm recording way past lunchtime. My stomach is going to continue growling throughout this episode, I'm afraid, but these two skeins are not going to make their way into that project. I purchased two skeins of the Tiger colorway because it was my absolute favorite, and I feel like these three skeins would really work well together in a future project. I'm thinking about knitting a cute little vintage blouse. Squidney Knits has a pattern called the Home Front Jumper. It's a bottom-up pieced and set in sleeve, like set in puff sleeve design. And I'm thinking that I'm going to work the top portion of it with my favorite color. And then stripe this one at the bottom. So it's gonna be funky and fresh, but also like kind of retro. I think the combination of these like bright, bold colors with a very 50s vibe is gonna make it look sort of 70s-ish. I'm not sure. I'm not stuck in the 70s. Nothing has to be 70s-ish, but it's just, those are the aesthetics I love. I love orange and reds. I love yellows and greens, and I just love these colors so much. And I'm excited to work with them. I feel like I have, once again, far more than I need. And I was on this kick of knitting my stash, and it's like as if I wanted to not have a stash anymore. I think in the back of my mind I was like, it's overwhelming how much I have. I must work through it. But now at this point, I feel like this scarcity mentality I've been talking about, where what if, you know, it's just the things happening in the world, you know, I'm paying attention to all of that, and it's just, you know, it kind of seeps into the subconscious a little bit with your daily choices, you know, just realizing like things are unstable, and this kind of grasping for comfort and stability, and the stability of a full stash of yarn, I don't know, is somewhat appealing right now. So that's my yarn haul. I'm still working on the sleeves to my Ver pullover, as I've mentioned in the past several episodes of this podcast. I haven't had much time to knit on this project the past few weeks. I've been spending a ton of my time outside, in the garden, getting my hands real dirty. My fingers, I cannot get the dirt out from under my cuticles or my fingernails. It's near impossible right now. But I'm having a lot of fun planting some of my plants I've started from seed late February. I have outside my collard greens, nasturtiums, some container peas, calendula. Those are all kind of cool temp plants that will do well outside. So they're already out there. I'm anxiously waiting for the evenings to be 50 degrees so that I can put out the rest of my seeds, because they're really starting to get quite big. And I just have even more plants coming in April to plant in the deep shade, which I'm really excited about, and I'll share that with you when they arrive. I bought a peach tree too. I don't know if I've told you, but I put a peach tree in the yard, which is really exciting to me. And I'm excited to have peaches one day from my garden. I don't have a huge space. It's quite small. There's very few spots that get full sun, but I thought I would take my chances. You know, you only live once. You might as well try to plant a peach tree. Before we go, I might insert a little footage of my garden for you to check out. I just planted my collard greens and nasturtiums that I grew from seed and put them in a couple containers. I just picked up this morning these 2 strawberry varieties and a cute little cage for my jalapeno pepper I will put out in a few weeks. I didn't know I put in the ground this, I think it's a naked lady bulb, but it sprung up this year. I wonder if it'll flower. But these are some black-eyed Susans. A lot of them had self-sown over here, and I relocated them to this area. I have 2 high bush blueberry varieties and a sage plant in this main bed that I mostly grow flowers in. I'm going to put tons of zinnias and some sunflowers, and I'm going to try to fit some okra in here as well. I just spread more compost throughout the whole yard yesterday. Here's my brand new peach tree. I do need to prune just a tiny bit. I think that this branch is growing a little too close to the other one. So I'm gonna get my shears out in a second, but do you see these bright pink little buds? I don't know if I can get a focus on them, but they are so stinking cute. And I have raspberries. That's our all seasons little cat hutch for the ferals. But I have more collards and nasturtiums, some container peas. This is my container of stinging nettles. I propagated some heuchera plants from a larger plant I have in a container back there. And here we have more self-sown black-eyed Susans right here. I relocated any herb or self-sown black-eyed Susan from this bed into other parts of the yard. I have this entire area prepped and ready for deep shade loving plants, and those are going to come in April. On these cattle panels, I grow every summer cucumbers and long beans. And I just put a $10 rose bush that I bought at one of those big box hardware stores. And it's a climbing rose, so I'm hoping it will do well in that area. Calendula, I just put in front of the daffodils. I'm gonna try to fit another plant in front of the St. John's wort I pruned back aggressively this winter. I had never pruned it before, and it was overdue. But I have a third high bush blueberry plant. All three are different varieties. And here we have a couple blackberry canes. I have them zip tied to the fence because they just flop over, and the ends of them will touch down and put a new plant in the ground. I have a little one right here where I don't necessarily want it. This is a tiny yarrow plant. I love yarrow. It's one of my favorite plants. I want to have it everywhere one day. But here is my black raspberry patch. This one grows similarly to the blackberries. Wherever the tops touch down to the ground, they will root and start basically a new plant. I have a couple heucheras here, although you can barely see them against the compost. And the forsythia is starting to explode with color, which is exciting. And I have a couple random like pinky grasses I threw back here. I don't know, I bought them on impulse one day and it wasn't the right spot for them, and I tucked them in the back of the yard like I do random things. Like this fig tree, which is not much of a tree yet, but it just put out a second branch last season, and we have one big one growing, so we might get a couple figs this year. We have 3 pawpaw trees. I don't know if you saw them. There's this one here. There's one right in front of the black raspberries. And then I have another one just under this bird bath here. This one, Shippy accidentally broke when it was just a few inches off the ground, and I'm really glad she did because I want it to be a nice short tree since it's right in the middle of the yard. But that is, oh, and then I have these containers here. I might have forgotten to show you just more calendula and nasturtium. And then I have my lemon balm and some mint. I dug every mint I could find in my yard and I put them in one container so that it won't grow everywhere. But that is it for our gardening tour. I need to put my chair back and sweep up a little bit because it is a mess. And that's it. So I want to thank you again so much for watching. If you haven't found me on social media, my name's Taylor E. Owen on Ravelry, Instagram, and Twitter. You can find me on TikTok as Taylor Knits. I want to thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, do please subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. If you like this content, do please give it a thumbs up. I want to thank you so much for watching. We are hosting a knit along here. You wouldn't know it, but it's going to be a long ride. It's gonna be an ambitious knit along. So if you're working on a project or you're thinking about starting one that's ambitious to you, you're welcome to join. At the end of June, I'm gonna pick 5 winners to get a free pattern on Ravelry. That'll make it simple. I really want many people to have the opportunity for prizes. So we're going to choose winners that are diverse, brand new knitters, super experienced knitters, amazing wow project knitters. So if you want to get involved in the Taylor Owen Ambitious Knits knit along, you can post to Instagram, or I don't know, on Ravelry, do they have hashtags? I'm not sure, but you can do hashtag TOAmbitiousKAL to enter to win one of 5 prizes. And that's it. We're gonna use Instagram to show our ambitious knits, and you can also engage in the comments below. Let us know what you're working on, or if you have any questions while you're ambitiously knitting. We are here to help you. Either myself or others watching are happy to chime in and give you answers, feedback, you know, a little cheerleading if you want. So let us know what you're working on, and I hope that you have a wonderful day. Thanks for being here. Take care.